Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Dynasty Fantasy Football Buff channel. My name is Josh. I am your host. This is the channel that is dedicated to the art of Dynasty Fantasy Football. With me, I have my league mate, Noah. And guys, if you're new, first of all, welcome. This is the channel that we just talk Dynasty nonstop. Whether we're talking about oncoming rookies, Dynasty strategy, we talk about it all. So if you're new, I would highly recommend hitting that subscribe channel because today we are talking about the best part of Dynasty Fantasy Football, and that is rookies, right, guys? This rookie quarterback class is insanely stacked. It is ridiculous. It is arguably one of the best we've ever seen. We'll see how that plays out, but you can definitely make that argument. And everybody, I'm telling you right now, if you're in search for a quarterback in your Superflex league, this is the draft to do it, man. If you need a quarterback, this is the draft to make the moves, right? We all know that in your Superflex league, the cheapest way to get a quarterback is through your rookie draft. Yes, you can trade your entire roster to get Patrick Mahomes, yes. But if you want to get a quarterback on the cheap, got to do it through your rookie draft. So I want to start by prefacing with this. Noah and I, we're not quarterback whisperers, right? I'm not some elite quarterback analyst, right? I don't know. We're not even going to talk about where these players should land, right? Because we're not talking about NFL here. We're talking about dynasty, right? I'm a dynasty analyst, and our prospect rankings that we have in front of us right now are how we see them through a dynasty lens. So that's very important to establish, right? Because we're going to introduce the top 5 quarterbacks in this class. We're going to be talking about our pre-draft quarterback rankings because there's a lot of rumors that there are 5 potential quarterbacks that can be taken in the first round of this NFL draft, and we're going to talk about that all. So that all being said, let's get it. Guys, we all know that the most important aspect of a dynasty league is who you're in your league with, right? So if you're having trouble finding people to put a league together, go ahead and join our Discord channel. Look no further. Noah, hit me with it.
I'm pretty active in the Discord channel, believe it or not.
I love it. Oh yeah.
And there actually, just wanted to let you know, there are some people that are reaching out there right now trying to figure out what's going on with the league. So if you want to chime in, I need to send them your way. But just so you know, there are people that are looking for leagues, and it looks like we're going to have a couple leagues to put together.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, guys, all the leagues will happen after the NFL draft. I'm currently in the process of putting lists together. So DM me on Discord, right? If you're not in the Discord channel yet, the link will be down below. And as soon as the NFL draft happens, we'll let free agency happen. We'll let the NFL draft happen. And then we're going to be throwing together as many listeners, followers league as possible, right? That's the point. We want to put groups together of guys who love Dynasty. That makes the most fun. So join the Discord league, DM us, subscribe to the channel. It's all going to be fun, man. NFL quarterbacks. Let's talk about it, Noah, because this year is insane, right? The NFL landscape is about to absolutely change as we know it, man. There are so many teams that might be making moves for quarterback this offseason. We already talked about free agents. Guys, if you haven't seen that episode, we have it somewhere on the channel. It can't be hard to find. But just throw out some teams that might be looking to change quarterbacks this upcoming season. Jacksonville, the Jets, Houston, Atlanta, Detroit, Carolina, Denver, San Francisco, New England, Washington, Chicago, Pittsburgh, and the Saints. Those are what did I say? 13 different teams in the NFL that could be looking to change quarterback. Now, there's not enough rookies to supplement that need, right? But between free agents and these 5 rookies we're going to talk about, it is going to be absolutely insane. So, and I cannot emphasize this enough. These rankings that we're about to talk about are not how they'll be drafted in the NFL. They're exclusively dynasty, how we look at them through a dynasty lens. Noah, out of that entire list, right, that I just named off, can you think of where would be your ideal landing? What landing spot do you think will be the most fantasy friendly, right, between everything I just named, right? You want me to go through it again?
No. 2 places that I really want that. Okay, so Josh here is picking ahead of me 101. He's picking Trevor Lawrence. He's going to love it.
Easy.
I got the 102.
Yeah.
And so my decision's coming down to whoever San Francisco drafts, whoever Carolina drafts.
Absolutely.
And then after that, everything else is out the window, and I'm just taking best player. So those two places, Carolina quarterback, San Francisco quarterback, because Kyle Shanahan and that offense, George Kittle, you got so many pieces.
Oh, yeah.
And then to be with Joe Brady, DJ Moore, and whoever they decide to bring in, if they get to keep Christian McCaffrey, assuming they don't trade him, things like that.
Yeah, for Deshaun Watson. Yep.
So depending on if Justin Fields is in Carolina or Justin Fields in particular is in San Fran, like those two guys, that's pretty much probably what my decisions come down to. Or if they decide to go Lance or Wilson or Mac Jones at those spots, I have to think about it because those are two elite places you want to get a quarterback at.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, man. I could not agree more. I'm really excited to see how the NFL draft all shakes out. So let's dive into my tier one, because I have 3 different tiers here of the top 5 quarterbacks. And in tier 1, there's a single quarterback. And guys, it's no surprise. I'm not going to get spicy with it. It's Trevor Lawrence, right? People have been calling him the best prospect since Peyton Manning, if not all time. And it's really tough to knock that praise of Trevor Lawrence. He was the 6th greatest prospect of all time, translating from high school to college by 24/7 Sports. Scout Media, Rivals.com, ESPN, and 24/7 Sports all had him as a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. And USA Today had him awarded him the high school player of the year his senior year. So let's talk about Trevor Lawrence a little bit here. Physically, imagine if you could make a quarterback in a lab, right? Like your ideal quarterback. It really would be Trevor Lawrence, man. He's a designer quarterback. Let's talk about, of course, the long blonde hair. But he's 6'6", 220 pounds, and he has this beautiful combo of arm strength and arm talent. I really, especially after his little pro day the other day, I'm not sure there's a throw he can't make on the field, right? He is excellently accurate. And he has some legitimate wheels under him. In the 15 games he played in 2019, he ran for 563 yards and 9 touchdowns. In the 10 games he played in 2020, he ran for 117 yards and 8 touchdowns, right? And he's able to make highlight level throws on the run, right? So I have the 101 pick in our league, and because of that, I'm obsessing about it, right? I wanted to make sure there was not a shadow of a doubt that Trevor Lawrence should be the first overall pick in our draft. So I'm watching these videos on YouTube that are like, top 10 reasons for why Trevor Lawrence will be a bust in the NFL. And I watch these videos, and they make some good points, right? They talk about inconsistent ball placement, right? Locking onto his first receiver, running out of the pocket when he didn't have to, right? And all these things, to me, felt very nitpicky. Right, I felt like these players are going through his tape with a fine-tooth comb and just trying to find reasons for why he's not the greatest prospect of all time, which is fine. But when it comes to dynasty and it comes to fantasy value, I felt all of these things they talked about can be coached, right? I think he comes into the NFL. I think it's things that he can improve on, things he can develop to become great in the NFL, just as he was in college. The other side, so we talked about the physical side. Let's talk about the mental side, man. There's these intangibles. The man is a winner, right? He is a born winner. He was 37-2 throughout his college career. As a true freshman, he beat Alabama in the championship, man. The first time he lost in college was to the insanely powerful LSU offense with Joe Burrow. And then, of course, he lost this last year against Justin Fields and the Buckeyes that had been thinking about that game all year since their game last year. Urban Meyer, the current head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars, was on a CBS Fox interview back in September, way before he was the Jags head coach, way before the Jags had locked in that first overall pick. And in that interview, right, way before he knew that he was going to be Lawrence's coach, he said that Lawrence will be an elite NFL quarterback because of these intangibles that we're talking about. He said he was competitive, his toughness, his leadership, and his adaptability is what's going to make him into an elite NFL quarterback. So you talk about the landing spot, right? He's almost a 99% chance of him landing with the Jacksonville Jaguars at the 101 of the NFL draft. And there's this stigma around the Jaguars because they've been bad for the past couple of years. But I don't think that's the worst landing situation in the world. PFF has the Jags O-line ranked as 22nd overall. So not fantastic, but not terrible. That can improve through free agency, right? Urban Meyer's coming into as head coach, and that's something I'm excited for. He's going to have pretty solid offensive weapons around him between Laviska Shenault, James Robinson, DJ Chark, right? Maybe they draft someone in this draft as well. And the Jags have an insane amount of draft picks, man. They have the 101, then they have the 125 from the Rams. They have 2 second-round picks, a third-round pick, and 2 fourth-round picks. So he's landing in a great situation. Noah, I'm going to turn it over to you, man. Is there any reason, right, why Trevor Lawrence should not be locked and loaded as the 101 pick in your Dynasty Superflex draft?
The only reason I would say is if you'd rather be on the Kyle Shanahan or Joe Brady train if they draft either Zac Wilson or Justin Fields. Because I think those are the only 2 places where if you need a super flex quarterback, you can make an argument. It's like, yeah, that's kind of, I'd just rather be involved in that offense. Mm-hmm. But you would really just have to have something against Jacksonville and Urban Meyer, in my opinion, to do that. I could see, I wouldn't blame someone for doing it, is what I'm saying. But
I wouldn't do it.
Especially,
I personally wouldn't do it, yeah.
Well, and the thing is those assets of Jacksonville, the DJ Charks, the Laviska Shenaults, James Robinson probably might be a little bit more tough you might have to overpay slightly to get him.
Yeah.
But they're all obtainable. So if you have the chance to get Trevor Lawrence, you're going to have a chance to be able to draft, maybe some stacks to go along the way to buy into the whole offense.
Yeah.
Which, in my opinion, just increases what the upside can be.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I'd be taking Trevor Lawrence 101 all day. Like if you decided to go rogue for whatever reason, I'd be
I'd have to have a stroke.
I guess yeah.
Dude, I would have to have an absolute stroke, man. This is where we'll have to disagree a little bit because personally for me, and again, maybe landing spot changes that. Maybe you and I are having a different conversation in a couple months, but at least from a prospect perspective, I do have a significant gap between Trevor Lawrence and my quarterback too. Right? That's just how I see it. Trevor Lawrence is in his own category. So, I mean, his dynasty value, there's a lot of things to be excited about. I do believe he will get the immediate start. I don't think there's a world where they draft Trevor Lawrence and then have him play behind a quarterback right in Jacksonville. There's just no way. So, and I think he's likely to produce in year 1, and that has a lot of value. I mean, combine all the amazing things I said about him between his talent, his mentality, and then, of course, the players around him, and his great rushing ability, in my opinion, as of right now, Trevor Lawrence is already in the conversation to be a top 5 dynasty quarterback. Right now, today, before the NFL draft, before I ever see him take an NFL snap, the only quarterbacks in a startup draft that I would take right now over Trevor Lawrence is Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, and Josh Allen. Right? These are the only 3 that I would hands down, without even thinking twice, take them over Trevor Lawrence. Now, you can make the argument to take Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Herbert, right? You can make the argument to take all of those guys over him. That's fine. But in my opinion, he's already in that discussion, and he hasn't even played a snap in the NFL draft. And honestly, I think he has slightly less risk than a couple of those guys. Right? Even though he's a rookie, he's never played in the NFL, I think he's slightly less risky than Dak Prescott, for example, who's no guarantee to return with the Cowboys. So, I don't know, man. This is the way. I'll just preface it this way, right? In our Dynasty League, I have the 101, as you and I just talked about. My quarterbacks on my roster are Mahomes, Dak Prescott, and Joe Burrow, right? In our Superflex, or in our 2-quarterback league. I am hands down drafting Trevor Lawrence because of his dynasty value down the road. You sent me a document the other day on Fantasy Pros that's supposed to be a trade calculator in Dynasty where they assign a value.
It's terrible.
It's terrible, right? It's terrible. The numbers are kind of strange. It doesn't always add up. But if you look at Dynasty from that perspective of, okay, I don't need a quarterback on my team, but I'm adding another 60 points in Dynasty value to my roster that I could trade down the road. Right, if you look at it less from team need into a dynasty asset, then all of a sudden it doesn't make sense for me to go anywhere else. Because if Trevor Lawrence is a 60 when it comes to dynasty value, I really do think that in 2-quarterback leagues, I really do think that Najee Harris, Jamar Chase, or any other quarterback are probably more in that 30 to 20 to 30 to 40 range. right? So that's just how I see where I'm making my team better. I'm getting best player available, and of course in Superflex it just changes it even more. Am I? If you're in my situation, I have plenty of good quarterbacks. Would you? Is there any reason why you wouldn't be taking Trevor Lawrence at the top there?
If you want to get more running back depth, I would understand it. But
Okay.
two of your quarterbacks are also
Injured
coming
right
off
now.
pretty major
Yeah. injuries.
Yeah. So you don't know how either of them could or could not come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
that they shouldn't, but I'm just, it's just the kind of the reality of it.
Here's a question for you. Do you personally have any concerns about Trevor Lawrence transitioning to the NFL? Because I just gave him a glowing review. I just talked about how he's pretty much pro ready and how he's going to ball from the beginning. Are there any red flags on your side? Have you been? I don't know. What is your perspective here?
Well, it's just the Jacksonville. I think here's the culture's got to flip again.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And Urban Meyer has never been a head coach in the NFL. So,
yeah.
He's got a good staff with him, but everything's new. So things could start off rocky.
Yeah.
Until you get team buy-in, things like that, especially because who knows what kind of offseason we're going to have. You never know. How normal is normal going to be.
Yeah. Seriously.
So those are my things. It's just everything's brand new. It's literally just starting to put the pieces together. So it could not be just don't expect it to be Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes day one is what I'm saying.
I think that's fair.
Have realistic expectations as in what year one is going to bring. You could, for example, see if Justin Fields goes in and starts day one in San Francisco, you could see him having a better rookie career or rookie season than Trevor Lawrence.
Okay, sure.
Just because of the advancement of the team that he's playing for.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. No, I agree. With you. Yeah.
But also it depends what Jacksonville does with free agency.
Yeah.
So we don't. Jacksonville's team now is not what it's going to look like in 6 months. So
no, absolutely.
We got a lot, but just something that they really were one of the worst teams.
Yeah, yeah. Of course they have the one-on-one.
They have some good pieces around it, but
yeah,
it's going to take some time.
Yeah, and I think regardless of how the team plays, I think Trevor Lawrence will pass the ball enough that he'll be fantasy relevant. They'll have.
This is true.
So let's play a little either or real fast before I move on to my tier 2 of quarterbacks here. If you're in Noah, you're here, 2 quarterbacks, startup, dynasty draft. Who you taking, Mahomes or Trevor Lawrence?
Mahomes.
What about Deshaun Watson?
Deshaun Watson.
Let's talk Josh Allen.
Josh Allen.
Okay. Well, let's Kyler Murray.
I think that's where I would take Trevor Lawrence.
Interesting. So right now, hypothetically speaking, if I were to offer you the 101 for Kyler Murray, you'd consider it?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, interesting. And then Dak, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson. It sounds like are any of those 3 you take over Trevor Lawrence?
No.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I like it, man. Yeah, again, he's gonna ball, right? He's definitely gonna ball. So I'm excited to see how he plays. And of course, even if you're in just a single quarterback league, I think this conversation I had just shed a lot of light. We don't play a lot of single quarterback league. I don't really have those kind of rankings in front of me, but maybe that gives them a little bump, right? When you're in that category. For sure. All right, man, let's dive into tier 2. Tier 2 are quarterbacks that I absolutely love, a quarterback that I would be happy to have on my roster. And honestly, either of these quarterbacks I have in tier 2 probably would be a top. They should be the 101 in this class if Trevor Lawrence wasn't here, right? You compare him to past 101s throughout the NFL's career or the NFL's past. I think they compare pretty nicely. I think the only reason they're in that second tier is because of Trevor Lawrence and how legendary he is. But anyways, let's talk about Justin Fields, right? The man is a baller. The man is an absolute baller, and I really do think that people need to stop disrespecting him because I see so many mock drafts of him falling into the middle to late NFL draft, and it just feels disrespectful because the man's been balling his whole life, right? And I love seeing quarterbacks that have consistently balled throughout their entire career. I love the Joe Burrows and the Kyler Murrays or those one-year wonders and that, go into the NFL, but I also love seeing players that have just been good throughout the majority of their career. he started for 2 years starting at Harrison High School in Georgia, right? He threw for 4,000 yards and 41 touchdowns, right, over the course of his 2 years in high school, right? And he also added 2,000 rushing yards and 21 rushing touchdowns throughout his 2 years in high school. So he was balling out in high school. He comes out of high school, and 24/7 Sports has Justin Fields rated as a 5-star recruit, of course, and the second highest rated prospect, right behind Trevor Lawrence, right? So he comes out of high school and had just as much hype, but just slightly less than Trevor Lawrence, right? He commits to Georgia, gets very limited action in his freshman season, transfers to Ohio State and balls, man. He throws for 41 touchdowns, rushes for 10 more in 2019. In 2019, he finished third in Heisman votes, right, and was named the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. In the 8 games in 2020 that he played, he threw for 22 touchdowns, rushed for another 5. So, I mean, he played half of the games more or less that he played in 2019 and pretty much put up half the stats, right? Where he as opposed to rushing for 10 touchdowns, he rushed for 5, right? He threw for 22 touchdowns as opposed to the 41. So he played really, really well is the point I'm trying to make. And I've always enjoyed watching Justin Fields, right? He's a baller, but he locked himself as the quarterback 2 in my eyes in this class in that game against Clemson. Right. He threw for 6 touchdowns, which was insane. Right. And he played through a major injury. I don't know. He's tough, man. He got slammed in the ribs halfway through that game. So as a dynasty analyst, I like a lot of the things that Fields brings to the table, right? He has a very strong arm, right? He's pretty consistently accurate. And in 2019, I mean, he threw for 41 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions, right? So his accuracy is pretty legit, man. And his rushing abilities there so much fantasy value comes from rushing ability, man. It is absolutely crazy. I mean, the man is 6'3", 228 pounds, and is an absolute dual threat quarterback. I mean, he's bigger, stronger, and arguably faster than Kyler Murray, right? When it comes to an athletic runner, probably not as shifty, but he's also larger and can probably take more hits than Kyler Murray, who's been struggling from injuries off and on since he joined the NFL, right? So I also believe that he is he's my quarterback too, because I also think he's more pro ready than a Trey Lance or Zac Wilson, right? And not necessarily as Trevor Lawrence, but then those two. I mean, that Alabama defense that he faced in the championship might as well have been an NFL defense, right? So he knows, again, you make the argument, and we'll talk about this in a little bit about competition, but he has faced pretty much NFL caliber defenses in the past. And I don't think Lance nor Wilson has ever faced that high level of competition. So I understand that he has better weapons around him, but I don't think his adjustment to the NFL will be as aggressive as for a Lance or a Wilson. And I'm really excited to see where he lands, man. I'm really excited because even if he lands on the Jets, I'll be excited for him. But if the Falcons take him at 4, or like you said, the Panthers take him at 8, right? I legitimately think if that happens, it would be hard for me to not rank Fields here as a top 10 dynasty quarterback. So I'll turn it to you, man. Is Fields your locked in quarterback 2 in this class?
In my opinion, yeah.
Yeah.
For me, yeah.
Yeah. Second question for you. I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here, right? If he lands with the Panthers or the 49ers that you and I just talked about, which is a dream landing spot, how high would you rank him in a dynasty startup draft? Like, how many quarterbacks could we name that you would for sure take over Justin Fields if he lands in either of those 2 spots?
I mean, I'd probably just snuggle him right behind Trevor Lawrence.
Okay. So let's play that medium game a little bit here. So let's say Deshaun Watson or Justin Fields with the Panthers.
Well, hard to say because I don't know where Deshaun Watson's going to be, but Deshaun Watson based off who he is.
Okay. Let's say Josh Allen or Kyler Murray. Both of those ahead of him. Where are you sitting on that front?
Dude, I don't know. I think I'd probably take Justin Fields.
Really? Okay. See, that's good to know. I think a lot of people are hating on Justin Fields, and the fact that if he lands here and this talent that you and I believe in, I think he could be legit, man. What about a guy like Lamar Jackson? That's an interesting question for me.
I still like. I think I'd probably still go Justin Fields.
Okay.
Personally, just for me personally.
Interesting. So I'll wrap it up with one question here, and I think I probably already know the answer. But in a super flex league, who are you taking today? Right. Okay. Let's. I'll tone it back a little bit because it's awesome to talk about where he might land, but just today, Justin Fields as a prospect, where are you taking him today? Would you rather have Jalen Hurts, right, the starting quarterback now for the Philadelphia Eagles, who has all the rushing ability? He was the quarterback 6 over the games he started because of his rushing ability, or would you rather have the super flex 102? That's my quote. We don't know landing spot yet. We're just talking as a prospect. Would you rather have Jalen Hurts with the Eagles now?
Superflex 102 for sure.
Really? Okay. And is it pretty like hands
down? Yeah, it's a pretty wide margin.
Interesting. Okay, because I know there's been, of course, a lot of Jalen Hurts hype recently. He's moved into the top 12 rankings for a lot of people. But it sounds like you're taking Hurts.
If you talk to any college football fan, and you said yeah, Jalen Hurts and Trevor Lawrence are like on the same level, you'd be like, I don't know, it's just hard for me to get behind that because I love Jalen Hurts competitive. I love the Tom Brady in him.
Okay, the chip on the shoulder.
Yes. Yeah. In terms of pure ability, though, not as much.
Okay. Interesting.
Just I don't know. He's like a running back playing quarterback, and he's great at it. Like he's just built like a running back. But I just don't. I mean, he does not have the accuracy or the arm strength that Justin Fields has.
Interesting. Do you have any concerns of Justin Fields coming into the NFL at all?
I just pretty much being able to integrate himself into an offense.
Yeah.
Like if he goes somewhere that's not Carolina or San Francisco, I wish he would sit.
Interesting. Okay.
But if not, but if I guess my concerns with Justin Fields are it's the quickness of his, like what everyone's been saying on Twitter lately.
Yeah.
The quickness of his decision making, but just in terms of making sure he understands how he's going through his reads. Like I understand turnovers are going to happen, but he didn't turn the ball over a lot at Ohio State.
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of it would come down to if he can take care of the ball in that regards, I think he's going to be fine. Like I really think as long as Justin Fields doesn't expose himself physically too much as well as a runner.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
just getting smacked by an NFL linebacker is just a different. It's just a different thing. It's just different.
He's tough as nails, right? We saw that against the Clemson game, but you don't want to make a career of that, right? You don't want that to be a week in and week out thing against slammed.
Exactly.
So, I mean, yeah. No, I'm with you, man. So it sounds like, would you have any hesitation at all taking him in a superflex league at the 102 if he landed with the Jets, for example, or with Detroit, for example?
I heavily hesitate.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Those two landing spots are like, okay.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't blame you, man. Okay. That's.
And I even have Denzel Mims.
You could have the stack. Yeah.
And I'm still like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't blame you, man. I really do think Justin Fields is very similar to Travis Etienne for me, at least from a value perspective at this point, in the sense that landing spot can aggressively change where I'll have him ranked in my rankings. Like really very, very aggressively. So we'll see. I hope he lands somewhere with the Panthers or the 49ers, but we'll have to see, man. Anyways.
I will say, in terms of just the draft as a whole, it really does start at the 102.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Especially, at least in a super flex.
Yeah.
A super flex in particular, just because it's like you don't have to take anyone at the 102. You can you can take anyone.
Yep. Absolutely.
101, it's like if you're not taking Trevor Lawrence, why aren't you trading out of it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. No, it's very, very true, man. I had this kind of mixed feelings wash over me when I landed the 101 in our pick lottery, where I was super excited to get Trevor Lawrence, but I was like, well, there's really no scenario where I pass on him, right? So again, that's kind of a dumb comparison because I'm getting such a valuable player, but it's also like, well, there are I also enjoy the negotiating between players and whatnot. So I don't, anyways, but that's just more me because Trevor Lawrence should be locked in the 101. I totally agree with you. I'm going to move to my second quarterback of my second tier. And this might be a little bit of a hot take here because I don't know if people will agree with me, but Trey Lance is my third quarterback overall. My only other quarterback in my second tier of quarterbacks. A little bit of history on Trey Lance. Coming out of North Dakota State University. I mean, the man was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school, but ranked as the top quarterback prospect coming out of Minnesota. I mean, he initially wanted to play for Minnesota in college, but they asked him to transition to safety, right? And no team in the Power Five even considered him as a quarterback, man. They all wanted him to be either a wide receiver or a linebacker just because of his physical ability. But he was determined to play as quarterback. And honestly, it paid off, man. He committed to North Dakota State University as their quarterback. And in 2019, had an absolute amazing a redshirt freshman season, man. He threw for 2,700 yards and 28 touchdowns, and he set an NCAA record for most passes thrown in a season without throwing an interception. He threw the ball 287 times and did not throw a single pick. I mean, the man has an absolute cannon for an arm. And I mean, dude, he is a beast with a ball in his hands. The dude, he's a big dude. He is 6'4", 226 pounds. And in 2019, he ran for over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns, right? So we've talked about Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts' rushing ability. He's bigger than both of them, right? Maybe a little less shifty, but just as fast, if not faster and stronger from what I've seen. So he's an absolutely amazing prospect. But Noah, you and I need to address the elephant in the room here, right? And I'm going to turn this over to you. How do you calculate competition, college competition in your quarterback prospect rankings? I'll just turn it to you because it's tough to compare what Trey Lance faced as opposed to what Justin Fields faced throughout this past season. So how do you calculate that?
Well, when you're playing against lesser talent, you should be making better plays.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Like the play, your caliber of your highlights should look insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you should be having long touchdowns. And the thing is, and then after that, you got to be more nitpicky. It's like, all right, what did you do well? You got to start looking at decision-making.
Yeah.
In terms of, okay, well, yeah, you may have completed it, but did you make the right decision?
Yeah.
The precision of your throws, as in where it's located. Was it the right place to be located? Should have been a low throw to save your receiver. Was it out far enough on a nice cross route and things like that. So,
yeah.
But a lot of those things should be exaggerated if you're playing against lesser.
Yeah.
But you should, in theory, have lesser teammates as well. So do you make your teammates around you better?
That's key, right? Because I don't think a gun to my head, I could name the wide receiver one for North Dakota State University, man. I couldn't name who Trey Lance was throwing the ball to. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? But for me personally, when I look at college competition, all it comes down to for me, is their transition into the NFL. Right. So, I mean, there's people on Twitter and out there saying, well, he threw for X amount of yards, but it doesn't matter. Look at who he threw the ball against. That's such a BS analysis just to begin with. Right. I mean, because you have to consider what their wide receivers were like, what their O-line was like. But like I said, how will he transition to the NFL? And to perfectly summarize how I feel about this, I'm going to compare Trey Lance to who I think in the NFL is a perfect comparison to, and that's Josh Allen. Man, the more research I did, the more tape I watched on Trey Lance here, the more he reminded me of Josh Allen, where he has a huge arm, comes from a small school. I mean, Josh Allen was coming out of Wyoming, right? And they have a very similar build. I think they're pretty much the same size and weight. I think Trey Lance is slightly smaller, but very similar rushing ability, right? And I mean, Josh Allen ran for 8 touchdowns this past season, and I think that's within Trey Lance's a range of outcomes, and that's huge for dynasty, man. That's huge for fantasy value. But I need to remind everybody of this because Josh Allen is now a top 3, top 4, if not higher dynasty quarterback. Josh Allen broke out his 3rd year in the NFL. It took him time for him to become the NFL player that he is. A lot of people highly criticized Josh Allen coming into the NFL, even after his rookie season, because of how inconsistent he was as a passer, right? He was very inaccurate. It took him time to get acclimated to the NFL. And I foresee a very similar path with Lance. So I'll say this right now, man. If Lance lands somewhere like the Panthers at 8, which you and I talked about, or the 49ers at 12, and even the Lions at 7, right? Even the Lions, because in all three of these spots, I don't think he has to be the starter right away. Right, it's possible that he gets drafted and they keep Teddy Bridgewater. It's possible that he gets drafted and they keep Jimmy Garoppolo and they give him a couple weeks, if not a whole season, to learn and develop. Man, he is gonna ball, dude. He is going to absolute ball. Like if he gets drafted to the Panthers or 49ers, and has a season to get acclimated to the NFL, he's the quarterback 2 in this class. Right, he just because of his rushing ability and his cannon for an arm, and then of course, I mean, we just talked about how great the landing spot is. What is your initial reaction to Trey Lance as a prospect?
Just want to see him learn.
Yep, exactly.
And that's really just the biggest thing, because I mean, again, watching just some of his highlights and looking at some of his, because the North Dakota didn't play this fall, so it makes it a little bit more rough in terms of seeing where he's at now. But I just want to see him. He's 6'3", 2. I mean, he's just a big dude. I mean, and so I just want to see how he adapts to, because you can't just try to run over linebackers. In the NFL, on like a QB power out to the outside, like
because he's going to get hit, but he's not Cam Newton big, right? He's large, but yeah.
And it's just like, look at what it did to Cam Newton.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's my thing. It's like, that's not the type, like you'll have 2 great seasons.
Yeah.
But then before and after that, your body just breaks down.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, the dude's got a cannon.
Yeah, he does.
He doesn't even have to like hitch up into it. He just like launches the thing.
Yeah.
So, and I think one of his best with his deep ball, I think he can throw it super high. So it turns into like a pop fly almost for the receiver, which makes it so much easier to catch because you get so much time to run underneath of it.
Yeah.
And so I think really where I want to see him go is Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah.
More so than Justin Fields, because no one's going to be banging the table like you need to start Trey Lance year 1.
Yeah. Let him learn. Give him a year behind Matt Ryan. Oh my gosh, man.
And just give him the Pat Mahomes treatment, where you play him behind a good, solid guy. Matt Ryan's on his way out anyways.
Yep.
He gets to throw to some awesome receivers, new coaching staff, but you don't ruin and disrespect everything Matt Ryan's done for the franchise.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, that depends on if they like him as a prospect.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see his it sounded like his NFL draft stock was growing quite a bit after 2019, of course, right? Everyone was pretty hyped up about what he did, throwing for no picks and all that production. Then he had one exhibition game this past season and didn't perform as well as people expected. And I personally don't care, right? I really don't care, just because you look at it from a high level, just the context in general. If I know that there are going to be a amount of NFL scouts sitting in the stands and I don't have a full off season, I have it at my first game and my first and only game of the season and my future depends on it, there's just so much psychologically that just isn't fair to evaluate from. So I that one game in 2020 kind of threw out because he did throw his first pick of his since 2018 or whatever, whenever the last time it was. So a lot of people are saying that hurt his draft stock because he didn't look as good as people expected, but I don't think that's fair, man. Do you agree with me here, or did that hurt how you see Trey Lance?
One day doesn't make or break an evaluation for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yep. Yeah, I totally agree, man. So again, guys, we'll wrap it up with Trey Lance, wrapping up my tier 2 quarterbacks. Just with this conclusion. he's Josh Allen. That's how I see him. He's got the huge arm. He's got the size. He's got the rushing ability. It will take time for him to develop. Noah, hit me with it.
I will say Josh Allen is successful because they have a team that's wholeheartedly down to build around his strengths.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's really what it takes for any quarterback to succeed, but especially with these super dominant in like a few area quarterbacks like Josh Allen, mobile, strong arm type guys. You got to have a philosophy that matches what they can do instead of asking them like what Tennessee did with Marcus Mariota. Asking him to do things that just don't fit why did you draft him if that's what you wanted to do. So just keep that in mind.
You make an excellent point. You make an excellent point because I don't want to promise that he's going to be a top 3 dynasty quarterback in 2-3 years from now when I comp him to Josh Allen. That's what it sounds like. And that's not what I mean to say. I just compare him in a lot of ways as a prospect, but there's no guarantee he'll hit that ceiling. I mean, do you think you and I would be talking as highly as we are of Josh Allen as a top 3 dynasty quarterback had they not traded for Stephon Diggs? So
definitely not.
So there's some things like that, right? You're told there has to be landing spot weapons. You're right. No, you're absolutely right. But I also think that he has enough of a rushing floor that at least for dynasty, that's why I have him in my tier 2 as a prospect. Tier 3, man, we got to talk about your guy, right? I'm a Utes fan. I refuse to talk about this man. Zac Wilson, I'll turn it over to you.
Interesting prospect. Interesting prospect. I will have to preface it hurts to try to watch so much BYU football because I'm so privy towards them already that when I watch Zac Wilson throw football, I just go, and I don't do this for like Trey Lance, but I do it for Zac Wilson. I go, BYU's not even playing anyone good.
I love that.
I just can't help it, but I'm just like, BYU doesn't play anyone. Like, what does it matter what their players can do? But I will say, if I try to imagine, if you put yourself in the Utes' shoes, and out of all the years you got to play BYU, you got to play Zac Wilson, you're like, okay, we got our hands full. That's a lot of the time how I initially measure up a quarterback and how I think I've actually perceived them. Is I think about, okay, how would I feel about my team having to play them?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I would not, I'd be like, okay, in for one. So, but I love his creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, his creativity, his feet are super quick. He moves his feet like a point guard, in terms of just kind of, it's almost like he's just dribbling in between his legs all the time. Just imagine if like that was a thing that happened in football. And it just makes it seem he's just always able to be maybe 1 or 2 steps quicker than everyone else because he's always ready to explode. Again, big arm, big cannon, pretty accurate for the most part, but I think my biggest holdup on him is at this point in time is I think he gets criticism that Justin Fields gets that I think Zac Wilson doesn't get. And I don't know why, because I think, I went back and watched some of his last year's games, and then I watched this year's game versus Houston. And I mean, there are times where he's throwing into double coverage, and he's throwing a fantastic ball. But he's not throwing it to necessarily the correct read.
Interesting.
And I don't know if that comes down to BYU coaching, his own, if that's on him or if he was just really liked what he saw and just wanted to give his guy a chance. But I just don't think his ceiling is. I really don't know how to feel about Zac Wilson as an NFL prospect, if I'm just being totally honest. Because there are times where I'm watching him, I'm like, he's great. He's got the wheels, he can move, he can make the throws. I don't think his arm strength, I think he's a little bit shiftier as a runner, but not as talented as a passer as Justin Fields is.
Interesting.
If we're going to compare, these post or these after Trevor Lawrence guys.
I think he could be as shiftier, but I don't think he's as athletic or fast necessarily. but I'd give him shiftier for sure.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
lateral speed.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
he might have, but and he just plays when I watch him, I can't people say Kyler Murray, and I can see some of
Mm.
the throws he makes, how they are Kyler Murray-esque, especially the way they step up into the pocket. But when I watch him, especially when I watch him run, I just view Johnny Manziel.
Oh, brutal, man. Oh,
And I know, I mean, and it could be a good thing because I
it
mean,
could
Johnny
be. Yeah.
Manziel gone Mormon could have been a great NFL player.
Wasn't boozing so hard.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like Johnny Manziel come to Jesus could have worked out in the NFL. Like imagine if Johnny Manziel and Tim Tebow
Oh yeah.
had a player
Yeah.
and his name was Zac Wilson at BYU.
Wow.
So I don't know if that's an indictment on
Oh,
him.
that's so funny. I love that.
I don't know if that just and it
I see it, man. Zach
you
Wilson
see
is
it,
if Johnny
right?
Mansell had never had a beer. Right? That's straight up. That's just who he is.
He would be Zach
Oh, that's
Wilson.
awesome.
And people say it's Kyler Murray, but I go, dude, Kyler Murray is like that because he's so small.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he'd like a legitimate like 3, maybe 4 inches shorter than Zach Wilson type thing. But and Johnny Manziel would be about like probably right in between, but closer to Zach Wilson's height.
Yeah.
And the way they just move is similar, especially creativity outside the pocket, the way they
Oh,
manipulate,
oh yeah.
and still just make ridiculous throws, even though it's not the correct decision.
Mhm.
It just screams
Yeah.
Johnny Manziel. So, and I like Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
It's fun to watch. Yeah.
so I really that's why I don't know how to feel because I'm like,
Okay. Yeah.
because I
Fair enough,
go
man. Yeah.
Mormon Johnny Manziel. Is
More
that gonna work for me?
I love it, man. I mean, honestly, I hate saying anything good about BYU as a Utes fan. I think my grandpa somewhere getting mad the fact that we're even talking anything good about BYU. But it breaks my heart because the University of Utah didn't even give. I mean, Zach Wilson's from Utah, and they didn't even give him an offer. And they didn't even offer him a scholarship. Zach Wilson grew up as a Utes fan. I don't know if you've heard this story, but he grew up as a Utes fan. He even attended Kyle Whittingham's summer football programs since the second grade, right? He grew up here in Draper, was always going at watching Utes games, huge Utes fan. But there was a conflict where the Utes wanted to recruit Jack Tuttle, who didn't even end up panning out. Zach Wilson goes to BYU and balls. And honestly, I mean, in hindsight, it might have helped his draft stock just in the sense that BYU had a full offseason. They didn't have to worry about Pac-12 restrictions and played a full allotment of games. So maybe it helped his draft stock. Regardless, as a Utes fan, it was tough to see. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk Dynasty, right? And he is right outside of my tier 2 of Dynasty prospects for a number of reasons. And the first reason is his transition to the NFL, right? I really do think you and I just talked about how Trey Lance will need time to develop. And you mentioned a great example of how you saw, Zach Wilson throw a couple questionable plays. I do think that Zach Wilson needs some time to develop to hit his true potential, right? If Zach Wilson gets drafted at the 102 by the Jets and gets thrown in as the immediate starter, I'm worried about him, right? I'm worried about him for fantasy, and I'm worried about him as an NFL player because I believe he'll struggle, right? I believe on that offense getting thrown into the fire, I think he will struggle. And the one thing I do not know if this will translate into his NFL game is his rushing ability, right? We all know how important rushing ability is for fantasy quarterbacks. I don't know if you've heard of a channel called Bunk Bed Breakdown. They're fantastic. Mike over there runs it. Guys, hit subscribe on that channel. It'll change your dynasty value forever. They're just so great. Anyways, Mike over there recently did a study on NFL or fantasy quarterbacks, and in his study, it showed that 60% of the top 12 fantasy quarterbacks this past season, 60% of them, so over half, had at least 20% of their fantasy total production come from their rushing ability. Right? So pretty much the conclusion was to be a top 12 quarterback, you really do need some kind of rushing value. It's no longer an added bonus, right? You need to have some kind of rushing ability. It's a necessity now. And Zach Wilson threw for ran for 10 touchdowns this past season in 2020, and I don't see him. I don't see that happening in the NFL. I watch his film, right, and a lot of his rushing production came from broken plays or slipping out of tackles, and I mean, outrunning linebackers on the edge from Troy University is a little bit different than outrunning linebackers in the NFL. So I get it, right? And don't hear what I'm not saying, man. He is incredibly talented. I like him as a prospect. He has a fantastic arm. His footwork is fantastic, but I do think it will take time for him to develop. And I'm not the biggest. I don't think his rushing game will necessarily translate to the same level as a Trey Lance, Justin Fields, or Trevor Lawrence's will going into the NFL. I mean, I have a really hard time seeing Zach Wilson score more than 4 rushing touchdowns on a season in the NFL. I have a hard time picturing that in my head, more than 4. But I could easily see Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Trevor Lawrence all putting up 7+ on any given year. And that's a significant difference to a fantasy quarterback. So I'll summarize it like this, right? When it comes to fantasy outcomes, his absolute ceiling for me, the highest he can potentially go in fantasy is Joe Burrow. That's his ceiling to me, where he's not a top 5 dynasty quarterback necessarily, maybe on that fringe, but he's a top 8, top 9 dynasty quarterback. That's his ceiling for me, where if he, steps up as a passer, he has the arm talent for it, and he has enough rushing ability that he's top 10. That's his ceiling. His absolute floor for me is Drew Lock, right? Where maybe he gets thrown into the fire a little bit too early. Maybe his game doesn't necessarily translate to the NFL as we expect it to. Maybe the landing situation, whatever it could be, that's his range of outcomes for me. That's why he's right outside my second tier of quarterbacks. So a dream landing spot, you and I already talked about it. I really hope he doesn't get drafted by the Jets. I personally, whether it's Trey Lance or him, would love to see the Falcons draft him for every reason you and I just talked about, right? If he gets drafted by the Falcons at 4 and has a year to develop behind Matt Ryan, who took that team to a Super Bowl, 2022 rolls around and all of a sudden he's throwing to, he has Calvin Ridley, right? He has all their weapons in that new offense. That would be amazing, right? Then if that happens, then you can make the argument for him to move up ahead of a Trey Lance or Justin Fields, depending on landing spot. But that's where I see him, man. What do you think? I'll turn it to you. I just gave you the range of outcomes between Joe Burrow and Drew Lock. Do you think that's fair? Do you think he has a higher ceiling than Joe Burrow? What are your thoughts on those comparisons?
No, I actually think giving him a Joe Burrow ceiling is pretty awesome.
Hell yeah. And
I
love Joe
Burrow.
Johnny.
Yeah, I know. And I think a sober Johnny Manziel fits in there.
Yeah.
So
I love it, man. I absolutely love it.
Zach Wilson, he could. I mean, I think Justin Fields has a chance to be the best quarterback in this class, and I think Zach Wilson. I mean, any of these top 4 quarterbacks could end up being the best quarterback, depending on if they just get the best chemistry between coaching staff and front office and everything like that.
Yeah,
it's just
develop. Yeah.
That's really what, in terms of dynasty, that's what separates all these guys for me is personal preference. And I just don't prefer Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
That's just, it's just his, I just really like Justin Fields, but if the landing spot provokes otherwise, then maybe you just got to roll with the team and the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think.
But it's so tough. I think about this all the time.
Yeah, it's so tough because we could be literally 3 years from now talking, like you said, about any of these players being the best. But from Dynasty, I do think that both Trey Lance and Zach Wilson will take a little bit of time to develop into their true potential. And I do think that Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence could automatically pop off, right? I don't think they necessarily need a year to develop necessarily. I know Trevor Lawrence doesn't, but Justin Fields off and on. Yeah, what do you think?
I'd love to see Fitzmagic work with Zach Wilson.
That would be awesome. That would be great. Yeah, I could totally see that. I don't know where they would land because I don't know where Fitzmagic is going to land. But he would be the perfect mentor. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he really would be, like, especially if Deshaun's not in Houston and those two were in Houston together.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The Patriots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I would love to see him.
You know,
yeah. Yeah.
there are a couple teams, I'm just, I just be curious. I don't know. I kind of just get the feeling that Zac Wilson could be a Bear.
Interesting. It's possible. I don't know if he'll fall that far, man. There's a lot of
No,
hype. I mean, the Bears
there's
don't pick
so
till
much hype
20.
behind it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I really do think, I mean, he's got to go in the top 8 picks. I have a really hard time seeing Zac Wilson fall past Carolina and Detroit.
Yeah, he's probably, dude, I just don't know. I don't know.
You know what's interesting? I don't hate him landing in Detroit either at 7. I know you hate Detroit.
Behind Goff?
Yeah, behind Goff. Give him a year to learn, and then hopefully they'll draft another or keep another offensive weapon. He'll step in over Goff after a year of learning, and then he'll have, DeAndre Swift to throw to, and hopefully this upgraded offense. I don't know. I have a hard time valuing the Lions as a whole, but yeah, I don't hate it. Let's transition to my last. I mean, the fifth of the top 5 quarterbacks. My second tier 3 quarterback, and this is Mac Jones. Mac Jones, is a junior coming out of Alabama here. Didn't play, of course, his sophomore season until Tua got hurt. He started his junior season and threw for 4,500 yards and 41 touchdowns. And he balled, right? He balled. So Mac Jones is kind of on the flip side of the argument of Wilson and Lance, where yes, he plays in the SEC, but I mean, he was throwing to Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs 2 years ago, and Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle this year. Right. So, yeah, I mean, he played with much tougher competition, but his wide receiver core was insane. And so I'm kind of like in the middle with Mac Jones, and I didn't know why until I listened to this amazing interview from PFF. And in this interview, they threw out this stat that I think you're going to love, Noah, where they said Joe Burrow, in his last year of college, threw completions into a tight window graded by PFF was 128. He had 124 completions in a tight window. Mac Jones, this entire past year, only had 44 completions into a tight window. All right, so we didn't really have to watch Mac Jones struggle. We didn't have to watch him make these incredible plays because he didn't have to. Right? Bama has been so dominant, and he has such amazing wide receivers that he hasn't had to make those such technical throws. So the reality is I really like Jones as a prospect, right? But there is a part of me that believes he'll be a better NFL quarterback than he will be a fantasy quarterback. And a lot of that comes down to just his rushing ability, right? I've talked about this a lot, but if you're not rushing the ball, it's tough to be a top tier fantasy quarterback. But I do think that Max Jones is an excellent QB2 for your team. Right. I think if you're in a 2 quarterback super flex league and you need kind of a floor quarterback play, need some depth, I really do think that Mac Jones is worthy of a mid to late first round pick in your dynasty draft. Right. He's been compared to Kirk Cousins in the past. And I think that's a perfect explanation. Exactly how I think he is. He'll throw for maybe, once he gets acclimated, 30 something touchdowns, add maybe 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns. So that's about it. And you have the quarterback 10 or 12 or 11 on the season, which is not a fantastic, but it's great. It's a great quarterback too. For me, his ideal landing spots are the Patriots. I'm a Patriots fan. I would love to see them pick up Mac Jones at 15. I think he's a great fit for the Patriots system, especially if we can bring in any offensive talent at this point. Or the Bears. I could easily see him falling to 20 and the Bears picking him up. And if they keep Allen Robinson and Cole Kmet and, of course, Darnell Mooney, who you and I like, I think he could have a good NFL career, and I think he could have some decent fantasy value from there. Mac Jones, man, what are your thoughts on him? Are you excited to see him in the NFL at all? How do you see him from Dynasty, I guess, is the best question for you.
I love Mac Jones.
Really? I mean, dude, me too, man. He's a baller.
I think he's got a great computer on top of his shoulders.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to me.
Yeah.
You didn't watch Bama football and just go, like, he just didn't turn over the ball.
No. Yeah.
I don't care who you're thrown to. He just took care of the ball.
Yeah.
And I just think I think he has receivers that make his decisions easy.
Yeah. Wide open receivers. Yeah.
And he's like, I can throw it here and it'll work out. And it does, but I think, I just think he his best football is still ahead of him.
Absolutely.
And again, give anyone good weapons and you'll see what they can do. And obviously we've seen that he can make the throws.
Yeah.
And I think in a tradition, he just fits a more your traditional pocket passer.
Yeah.
Dynasty wise, it's not sexy, but he could be a super long-term starter. Like I'm trying to think of who he reminds me of. In terms of like how his career could go.
Interesting. I could see. I'm going to throw out a name out here, and maybe of course, I mean, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan are kind of the easier choices to throw out there. But I see a decent amount of Matthew Stafford in his game as well. And I don't know if I'm way out of left field, but that's just me.
Does he have that big of a cannon?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Matthew Stafford's got a fucking laser.
Yeah, he does. That's true.
I mean, that thing's like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know, man. That's just
I think he could just be like a smarter Jared Goff.
There you go. Yeah.
And I would love a smarter Jared Goff.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be all over a smarter Jared Goff.
For sure.
I think he will be better than Kirk Cousins.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. I like it.
I think if Minnesota drafted Mac Jones, it would be an extreme lateral move. But I do think Mac Jones could end up being better.
Interesting. Yeah, personally, I was wanting to hear your thoughts on this a little bit. I kind of like that Mac Jones was recruited by Alabama and then stayed there throughout his entire career until he eventually earned the starting job. Because I love seeing guys bounce from school to school to get that starting job.
Well, again, imagine how much you can soak up mentally.
Exactly. That many years with Nick Saban? Come on, man. Like it's invaluable in my perspective.
Especially because he was the third guy behind Hurts and Tua. So imagine, he's probably playing the scout team.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you're throwing against the number one, you're throwing against Bama's defense. And it's like, okay, you're either you're bound to make a couple plays if you stick your nose down, work hard enough. Yeah. And if you can do that, man, like sky's the limit. I mean, I think he throws the ball better than Tua, my opinion.
Yeah. Doesn't have the rushing ability, of course, but it's tough to argue his arm. Yeah. Yeah, man, I totally agree. So we'll see. We'll definitely see. As again, Dynasty, he's a great quarterback too, low-end quarterback one. In the NFL, I'd love him. I'd love to have him on my team. I'd love to have him on the Patriots. Absolutely. And Nick Saban talks so highly about him. And I know that Saban and Belichick are like good friends and talk about him. So hopefully the Patriots finally make a good first-round pick and take Mac Jones.
I think Mac Jones could end up being a great quarterback value this year, just because I think he's probably going to be the last of these five drafted regardless.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Other than maybe like Trey. I mean, I could see him jumping up to 3, but I don't think he's drafted top 2.
Yeah.
And I still think he could, and so with that, I just think someone, especially in like a early second round pick type of thing.
Yeah.
In your rookie drafts, I think he could be a great value guy.
Yeah.
Because I like the arm and I love the computer. I like the arm, love the computer.
I love it. I love it, man. It's true. I like that perspective of him being a great value because you're right. If you're quarterback needy, let's say you just, made a championship run in your league and you're at the very end of the first round, or you need a quarterback, you're at the very beginning of the second round and decide not to take a quarterback early, he'll probably be sitting there depending. But I don't think he has the hype as all these other quarterbacks do. But we'll see. Yeah, we'll definitely see. I'm curious to see how the NFL draft plays out. A couple sleepers I just want to throw out there, guys that I don't want to dive into too deeply on this show in particular. But I know Sam Ehlinger out of Texas was getting a little bit of hype. I know Kellen Mond from Texas A&M has been getting some draft hype as well. So just names to keep out there. Not guys that I'm particularly excited for. Kyle Trask is another one we could throw out there that I know you're
trash. Ooh, I hate that guy.
One that we're here not particular fans of, but I mean, if they become first round draft picks, then they at least have to be on our radar. Right? If the Saints, for example, at the very end take a Sam Ehlinger or a Kyle Trask with their first round pick at the very end of the first round, not likely to happen, but I mean, I'd be interested. It'd definitely be on my radar. Guys, those are the top quarterback picks. rookie content's coming, man. This is the dynasty season, and rookies is what it's all about. And we're gonna come back more. So again, if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already, join the Dynasty Discord. We're always talking Dynasty. Guys, that's all from me. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Peace.